Good day. Welcome back to the Senior Advocator. I'm Gigi, the gerontologist, or Ginell, if you prefer. Past episodes, we've been talking about Big Daddy D, or I call it Big Daddy D, dementia. Okay. Big Daddy D had 10 children, as I told you in some past episodes. Number one child is Alzheimer's, but today we're going to talk about 3 other of his children. That's going to be vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, and frontotemporal dementia. Yeah, kind of interesting and heavy words. Just a few tidbits. Alzheimer's was named after a psychiatrist. His name was Dr. Alzheimer's, and he was a psychiatrist looking at a woman who was very young, and at one point they called it senility, but it really wasn't. It ended up being Alzheimer's. He ended up with Alzheimer's himself, and they termed it, the disease itself, Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a dementia. And so today we're going to talk about vascular. We're going to focus a little bit on that particular disease. Vascular dementia is a condition that disrupts your blood flow to the brain and lack of oxygen. For example, specifically, it is a condition such as a stroke. And oftentimes, again, there is no reversing of a brain disorder or that particular condition. There is ways to which we can manage that. Vascular dementia is the second dementia in the big trail of dementias. So as I said, the first one was what? Alzheimer's. The second one is vascular dementia. Again, there is no cure, but there is a way to which we can manage that. Many people have had strokes. Oftentimes, you don't know what the symptoms are. You don't know what's happening. You may have had many strokes. All of them are disruptions to the blood flow to your brain and oxygen getting there as well. Most of the cases of vascular dementia, not all, are due to a stroke. All right. So with that said, all right, what are the symptoms? What symptoms am I having? Well, you may have some of the similar symptoms that the other dementias have. There's going to be problems with your memory. You're going to be problems paying your bills. Your behavior changes. You're not sure what the mood is that you're going through. You may temporarily get lost occasionally. So a lot of these symptoms are similar across the board, especially when it comes to dementia. With that said, and there's a ton more, and we'll talk about these other types of symptoms at a later date, but I just want to give you a bit of a flavor, because what I want you to walk away with today is what? One point of clarity and one action you can take should your loved one or someone you know come down with this specific dementia. All right, so we talked about what it is. We talked about potential symptoms. Let's talk about probably, we talked about signs really, but let's talk about, possible diagnosis and treatment. So what do? I think I have vascular dementia. Oftentimes, a lot of these dementias, including vascular, can come mixed. So a mixed dementia is simply, hey, this person has Alzheimer's, but they also have vascular. Or, oh, look at that. I've got Alzheimer's and I've got Lewy bodies, which we'll talk about later. They can be mixed. You can have more than one. But oftentimes, vascular dementia comes about in terms of you may have what we call a TIA or a TI, which is really a small stroke that you may not even be aware of. There is no reversal in terms of damage to the brain. So there's no cure in that. But there are treatments and ways that we might be able to prevent, if you will. And that simply is this. If you have a chronic disease, you could have high blood pressure, diabetes, issues with blood flowing through your arteries because they're too thin. Those can be some factors that may cause a actual stroke or an actual vascular dementia. Does not necessarily mean you have to have a stroke, but stroke is kind of the known thing. With that said, the preventions to that may be some medications. Some of us, i.e., have high blood pressure. I also have 2 sisters who have dementias. One has Alzheimer's, the other one has vascular dementia. I don't want it. So what am I doing? And what are you going to do? We're going to change our lifestyle. I'm working hard on it. And I didn't say it was easy, but I'm going to cut down. I'm going to get my roly-poly behind out there, and we're going to exercise. Yes, we are. Walking 20 minutes is not going to kill you. At least I hope not. Then we're also going to talk about eating. God knows I love to eat, okay? But cholesterol can be an issue. I've been dating these three guys, Ben and Jerry and Cherry Garcia, forever. I got to let them go. They call me in the nighttime. Not good. But those medications that are placed upon me to control the blood pressure, medications to control the cholesterol, unfortunately, yes, it may not be popular among some folks, but you got to start somewhere. And the exercise does it, and the eating does it as well. And yes, here is the most important thing. You are going to that doctor. You're going to get yourself with your primary, you're going to get yourself with the neurologist, but two things. You're going to do the imaging. Imaging being, do I need a CT scan or do I need an MRI? Oh, yeah. Blood work, yes. We're going to talk about your medical history, yes. You're going to let these people be nosy in your business. Otherwise, bye-bye. With that said, we don't panic, we plan. When you come into the Senior Advocator's episodes, we don't panic, we plan. That gives you a little bit of flavor of what vascular dementia is. Today's episode is specifically on Lewy body's dementia. That's a lot, Lewy body's. Lewy body's is an actual name that came from a doctor, and his name was Lewy body. And Lewy body's is simply this, or LBD, it is simply this. It is a brain disorder that can cause issues with your memory, your mood, your thinking pattern, your behavior. And there's a specific component of visual hallucinations. 80% of people in this nation, about 1 million or so, have Lewy body's disease, which is pretty common. It is a dementia. There is no cure. We'll talk a little bit more about possible ways in terms of prevention and what can be done. But with that said, your thinking, your behavior, all of this has to do again with your cognitive memory. And so this disease can happen to people young, somewhere in the 50s. As I said, there is no cure. You can live a long time, you can live a short time. But that said, what are some of the symptoms? What does this look like? Because there's two different types of Lewy bodies. Let's talk about some of the symptoms, and more so, let me step back for a second and talk about the causes. There are clumps of proteins that lodge themselves in your brain. Those clumps are called Lewy bodies, after that doctor I just told you, whose name is actually Lewy body. Don't ask, I'll give you more later. But nevertheless, that is it in its simplest terms. They lodge themselves, those proteins, in your brain. There's no cure. And as a result, you could end up with one of two types. One could be the Lewy body's dementia, or the other one could be the Lewy body's Parkinson's or Parkinson's dementia itself. Now, we're going to cover that in a second. But I just wanted to kind of give you, again, this is simply a flavor because all of this is a lot. All right. So some of the causes as well, we talked about the clumps. We talked about some of the signs and symptoms that may be things like movement may be a problem, your behavior. And so in the Lewy body's dementia, you're going to deal with more things like thinking, sleeping behavior is a problem. With the Parkinson's, there's stiffness that comes over, and it is pretty much Parkinson's disease. Now, it is important to know that because you have Parkinson's may not necessarily mean you have Lewy body's dementia. It's a lot, it's weird. But if you have the Lewy body's disease or dementia, then you can also have the second one, which is the Parkinson's disease. Okay? I'll come back and talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about what can be done, because there is no cure. What are some of the things that I can look up and say, I'm having problems sleeping. I'm having problem with movement. I'm having issues just thinking things through. There's no such thing as multitasking. And so those are just a few things. There's a laundry list of symptoms. But the most important thing is that we get properly diagnosed, because there are two different types. Lewy bodies can be confusing. It can look like Alzheimer's. It could look like schizophrenia, but it isn't. It's Lewy bodies. And so the important thing is going to be that we get to the doctor to do proper assessment, to do blood work imaging. When you're looking at a Lewy bodies, the doctors are really drilling down on your medical history. They're doing a lot of questioning and assessment, testing. It will be important to get a great care team. It will be important to get additional resources and support groups to be a part of. This is not a disease that you can go it alone. I'm only giving you a flavor of this. And I can tell you from experience as a gerontologist, but more so as a caregiver who has two sisters who have dementia. The sister who has Alzheimer's also now has Lewy bodies. So Lewy bodies can come on you slowly and it just progresses. It is a progressive dementia with no cure. With that said, we don't panic. We plan here at Senior Advocators. There's so much more to this, and you cannot go it alone. You will go to the doctor. You will get with a neurologist or a neurologist psychiatrist, because you're dealing with some psychosis in this particular disease. But you've got two other components. It's the Lewy bodies dementia, and then you're dealing with the Parkinson's portion. It is important to determine specifically which type of Lewy bodies you have. All is not lost. Today, we're talking about frontotemporal dementia. This is a rare dementia amongst all the dementias. It can start early in one's life from 45 to 60. It has to be looked at carefully because doctors have a time trying to diagnose this disease. What is frontotemporal dementia? It is a group of disorders that impact your front temporal lobe and your temporal lobes, which are underneath your temples. The frontal temporal is underneath your forehead. So as part of the brain, those two entities are impacted. It impacts your behavior. You usually, if you are diagnosed with this disease, unusual behavior, we're talking about issues with your speech, your overall language, the way you write, emotional behavior, strong impact there. Persons with this, as I said, can be 45 to 60 years of age. They can live 10 years after the actual diagnosis. Now, again, we know God has the last say on all of that. There are about two different types of the frontotemporal dementia. One is a behavioral variant, and it impacts mostly your emotions, your movement. The other one is what we call aphasia, which happens to do with your language, your speech, your writing. Overall, frontotemporal dementia can be clumps, if you will, or actual proteins that are building up in your neurons in your brain, the front and the under the temples, and destroys. It just totally destroys the neurons and they die. And then you end up with this very rare disease, which has a lot of abnormality to it. Some of the symptoms can be things like you go to work because people are challenged with work, life, with walking, with just speaking. You may be at work and blurt out something crazy, confront the leader or the manager of your job. People with this rare disease have a strong sexual appetite. You could be accosted or asked straight out, let's get it on. And I ain't talking Marvin Gaye. Okay. So those are just a few things. But what is important here too is that genetically, a lot of doctors are looking at frontotemporal dementia because it could be genetic. Here's the thing. There are persons who in their families may have a lot of dementia. And one of the things that has been said, and research is still going on, is that it could be frontotemporal dementia. So what to do genetically, if you are diagnosed with this disease, then you're going to want to have a strong care plan in place. That means looking at your legal, that means looking at your physical, your medical, and putting those things in place because you need 24-hour care with this particular dementia. You're also going to want to do a genetic evaluation on your family history. You're going to also have a number of lab work done, a lot of, if you will, MRIs, etc. What they have found is when one dies and they look at the brain, that's when they really see the white mass, if you will, plaques and the proteins that have built up. But it's not until you have passed on. So you will want to wrap your arms around your loved one and make sure that you don't, if you will, have them be distracted in any way. You will have a challenge perhaps with their language, their speech, their writing. You don't give them too many options because you want to keep that stress level down. In other words, for example, do you want to go to the park or the zoo? You want to ask them one question, what would you like to do today? Because we want to keep those abnormalities down. There is certain medications. Again, there is no cure because this is the progressive disease as well. There's no cure for this, but there's medications like antipsychotic or antidepressant because many of these people can be depressed as well. But again, before we go ministering out tons of medications, let's make sure that we have the proper diagnosis. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If what you have heard and what we talked about has been helpful, please scroll down and check the description where I have placed resources and links for you. And if you want more than a podcast episode, go to SeniorAdvocators.org. That's SeniorAdvocators.org, where you will find free resources for you. And if you want to talk over your specific situation, I'm there too. Now, before you go, please like, share, and subscribe. This will help many families who need to find this show when they most need it. Remember, you cannot go this alone. I'll see you in the next episode.